Okay. And so we're going to record the Interfaith Council of Henry County and Martinsville and Henry County, and see what the opinion of everyone down in my hometown, to see how you're doing and see how this virus is treating people. So tell me, Beth, let's start with you since you're the first one in line here. Tell me, how's the COVID treating you down there?
Are we speaking generally, the general population, or me?
Generally, and you personally, and your congregation.
It's been very interesting in terms of living here in Greensboro. I am pretty much sequestered. I go out maybe once a week to the grocery store. Mm-hmm. Other than that, I only walk out in the neighborhood, and I have some girlfriends. Martha, Kathy is one of them. I walk with at the appropriate distance. For me personally, the only difficult part is that my father is 97 and in memory care and does not understand why I am not coming up to visit him. And because he's in memory care, that's a conversation we have to have twice a day. I call him twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon.
Yeah.
And I have a granddaughter who I can't see. However, Freddie is 4 and I can talk to her, but I have a grandson who's 4 months. Yes. And I have not seen him since he was 6 weeks old, and I can't hold him.
Oh my goodness.
With those exceptions, my kids I can stay in touch with, but with my father, who cannot use this technology, and my grandson, for whom this technology means nothing.
Yes.
Those are the two things. I think for our congregation, it's very difficult not to be physically present and physically in our spiritual home.
Yes.
However, we have been holding Zoom services every Friday night.
Oh, good.
And which is actually more often than we normally would meet. We normally meet every other week. And we're holding them every Friday night via Zoom. Mm-hmm. And it's been lovely to see everyone and participate and touch base.
Yes.
See how everyone is doing.
It's interesting. Keith, are you with us?
Yes.
Oh, you can hear. Okay. Are you?
I can see you.
Yes, and can you hear me?
Yes, and I can see you as well.
Okay, great. We can see you too, and you're outside in the sun. You're looking just like we imagine you.
Well, I don't know. I'll take that as a compliment.
The last time I saw you you were online. You were dancing. So
Well, yeah, that's not happening.
I will keep that picture, Keith. I just want to let you know that.
Okay. Well, I'm walking the dog now, which is why you see me outside.
That's beautiful. Now, Martha, I don't want to let you go here, but I wanted to find out what, and Keith, what we're talking about is the impact of COVID on the religious institution and how it's affected the institution as well as you personally, and how well, hopefully during this interview that we can find out whether there are any lessons learned. So we'll let Martha go next, and then we'll come to you, Keith.
And I'm probably not nearly as careful as Beth is, partly because we're pretty isolated here in Martinsville, Henry County, and haven't had a lot going on. So I go to CVS and I go to Kroger and I go to Food Lion, but I wear my mask, wherever I am, and try to keep some social distance. I think for me personally, one of the things that has been maybe helpful, I don't know, I think it's going to depend on how things are when we get back to whatever normal is going to be, is that I sort of get up every morning and go, what do I feel like today? Is this a day where I'm going to be super organized and I'm going to move from one thing to the next and I'm going to get lots of things done and I'm going to feel really good at the end of the day? is this where I just feel like I can hardly remember my own name, and I can't, I can't pull anything together, and so just don't even try. So that's, I sort of vacillate between those two things, and I just try to go with whatever the day presents is what I'm not going to try to fight it anymore, because I did that for a while, and it wasn't particularly helpful. I think one of the things for me is just being so very grateful for the things that I don't have to worry about. That Bob and I are retired and our house is paid for, and I think about the folks that are struggling so at this point. And that sort of gets me into this. So what is it I can do? Have been contributing to one of the local food banks, giving some thought to some other things that might be helpful and appropriate at this point. Because I think that's what Judaism calls us to do is, wherever you are, whatever you can bring to it, that's what you're called to do. So there's not, my nursing license is still valid and active, but I'm really not going to go to New York City and volunteer.
Yes.
And I don't think they want me. I think they would see me as just another potential patient and do me out the door. So, but just figure out what are the things I can do, and then try, again, to contribute to whatever store of good there is in the world, with, some gratitude in my heart for all the things. Our granddaughters are 5 and 2. Yeah. So the 5-year-old can really interact on FaceTime and Zoom. Little Alice, a little less so. Mostly she just repeats our names over and over. But that's one of the things that has been very hard, is missing them terribly and not being able to go visit them. But so blessed with the technology that we can keep up with each other.
I am just so really grateful that I can just see all of you. I mean, just, it's just, because I was wondering, will I ever be able to get back there again?
Yes.
But it's great to see you. It warms my heart to hear your voice even. Keith, tell me your feeling about the impact of COVID. How's it treating you? How's it treating you and your congregation?
Well, it's not treating us well. It's very disorienting and confusing, very disconnecting, and another layer of grief that goes with not being able to get together with First Church is the fact that I am to move at the end of June.
Oh, wow. Where?
To the Winchester area.
Winchester, Virginia.
To Winchester.
Yeah.
So I'll be serving a church there. So fortunately, it looks like we do have a place to live. So we're getting a housing allowance as opposed to having a house provided for us by the church. So that just made it more anxious that we had to go out and find a place. But fortunately, we've been able to do that. But at the same time, I'm not able to go through the ritual of goodbye with the congregation prior to moving. It does look like we will be able to gather for worship again in June. For a couple of Sundays. But we've been happy here, and we would have been happy to stay here, but in Methodist circles, we understand that it's an itinerant system and we are appointed, and there are a lot of voices in the conversation besides mine. So
yes.
We'll be okay, but just hurts not being able to say goodbye. And we have been providing daily services, brief services, a word with the pastor that I've recorded practically every day. and just making some phone calls and trying to stay connected, sending out emails. And but it's you know, as a pastor, of course, you know, a pastor who this is all I've ever done. My life has been very much regulated by liturgy, by preparation for worship, by the calendar of the church year. And to have that, for the most part, taken away has been, you know, I've lost my anchor. And so I'm kind of being tossed and torn. But I do try to find connections within Scripture that assure me this is not unknown. For me, the image of exile has been a comforting image to see that my faith story, both Hebrew scriptures and Christians, understand the experience of exile, and also understand that ultimately good things happen in exile. You know, for our sisters, you know, Sabbath observance, the commandments really shaped and strengthened their life, as I understand it, in the time of exile. Paul the Apostle wrote letters from exile and prison. John gave the revelation, or received the revelation and delivered that while he was in exile on the island of Patmos. So that helps me. It's as if I've got advocates and companions in this time of exile.
That's interesting. The exile, the Exodus story is one that is in all the faith tradition, at least in the Abrahamic tradition. It seems like, is that correct, Beth? You're the scholar in religion here. Tell me, is that true in Judaism? The exile story is told in your congregation as well?
Well, it's fundamental to our tradition.
Yeah.
Exile of when Abraham, you know, moved to Canaan, and then they had to leave, and Joseph became exiled in Egypt, and then finally redemption from exile. I think it's the redemption from exile that is the bigger word in Judaism, but Jews throughout time have been exiled. This is something that has happened to us many, many times. Just in 1492, Jews were exiled from Spain, eventually Portugal. Many of them ended up in Venice and parts of Italy. And the exile for us, and I want to echo Martha's comments on gratitude here, the exile for us in those circumstances meant that not only were we physically exiled from our country, but our wealth had accumulated, kept by the ruling power in our country of where we were living. So in the late 40s, there were 800,000 Jews exiled from North Africa, the late 1940s. 800,000 Jews were exiled from North Africa, and they were stripped of their real estate, their furnishings, their money, their passports. So they were simply sent out with nothing. And France, many of the North African Jews landed in France. And from there, the Jewish community, the international Jewish community, was able to help them, get them passports, get them a new place to live. So exile is nothing new to us. And to Martha's point, I too am very lucky. I am semi-retired. I have a home, I have family, I have friends. I certainly complain to myself, but I try to keep those complaints to myself.
Yes. I feel what you're saying. I know that the adventure that my wife and I have is to go grocery shopping. And yes, we don't have to show up at a job every day, and that I am thankful for that. But I was interested in the notion of personal refinement, and I do get Martha's point of being grateful for all that God has given us. I am very interested in Keith's notion of religious refinement or growth during this time of being challenged by strife and stress and difficulty. But your religious life tend to flower and grow during those processes. Is that what? Do I understand it correct, Keith, or am I misinterpreting it?
Where I was going with that is that again, things happen in exile. I refer to Jesus' time in the wilderness, the 40 days in the wilderness, which without which I don't believe he could have entered into his ministry. Mm-hmm. So that time of fasting and isolation, self-quarantining, social distancing, prepared Jesus for his ministry. And so what I try to do is to say, okay, that even in this time of and I'll use the word again, exile, God is present and ultimately will bring about redemption. But it is tough. And I'll confess for myself, even as a Methodist, I'm not the most methodical in my practice of ministry. I do have my spiritual disciplines, but I can be kind of loose with them at times and not as disciplined as I'm sure I should be. I'm fortunate to have Paula, my wife, and we have, for the most part, enjoyed our time together after 37 years of marriage, and we'll be going to see our younger daughter in Roanoke tomorrow for Mother's Day. So Paula and I think, have grown through this. We have leaned on our faith. We have an active prayer ministry that was meeting in person before this, but is now committed to their Wednesday evening time of prayer. So that is of help. And again, I've gotten calls and cards and notes both from First Church and the church which I am to begin serving in July. Wow. So that is of help. But I'll confess there are those times where I feel like, God, I'm not sure what's going on here.
Yes.
And I feel, again, a great sense of loss, but then there are times where I feel, we're going to be okay here. So, but again, I'm comforted knowing there are brothers and sisters throughout Scripture who who express great joy on various occasions, but are not shy in expressing lamentation as well.
Sure.
So that is of help to me as well.
Yes, yes.
Khalil, one of the things that many Jewish congregations are doing right now, first of all, in our tradition, the period of time from Passover to the holiday of Shavuot, Shavuot literally means weeks, is 49 days. Mm-hmm. So we are in the middle of what is called counting the Omer. An Omer was simply a bit of barley that was to be sacrificed at the temple. Shavuot over time became associated with the giving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. And so Shavuot, like many, both this agricultural root and a spiritual historical root. And it is during the period of counting the Omer, to focus somewhat on spiritual refinement to prepare ourselves for seeing the Torah yet again. So we have been talking in our congregation about attributes or characteristics and the kinds of ideas we should be focusing on in this period. And each week has its own identity. So the first week was love. The second was strength. We're entering the fifth week, which is called hope, meaning splendor, but it is a time when you focus on humility and the benefits of humility. That has been very helpful for me, and I think for many Jews around the world, to have this quarantine occur at the same time we are already versed in spiritual renewal.
Right. Well,
I'm also interested in the Islamic tradition. Are you going to?
Well, it was fitting in so well, Beth. I mean, how could I resist? Yes, we're in our 15th day, and it is right in the middle of the Ramadan. We have 15 more days in front of us. And talk about quarantine, Keith and Martha, we don't eat for 30 days, and you do just kind of slow life down. You know, you're fasting and restraining for almost all social activity from dawn to dusk and for the 30-day period. So it is something to learn there. And one of those lessons, you know, that is beneficial is the power of self-restraint in an effort to reconnect with God. And that hopefully is something that I will learn at the end of the Ramadan observance. But it is something that does cause all of us a moment of pause, you know, whether what this life means and what is our objective in it. And it does help us to refine it. It is a time that we certainly want to be observant of our prayers. You know, those 5-day prayers, they come so fast, you know, but you have to observe them. And that's something that has been something that I have to be mindful of. And I think being more mindful of them, not being so busy where you're skipping over them, you know, you have to actually observe them and observe them on time. It's a tremendous amount of personal discipline. But it also makes me wonder why I do these things, and I do them for the sake of God, you know, because God created everything and God gives us everything. So it's one of those things that I'm learning more about, you know. This part of the Quran where we're reading is talking about the legitimacy of the message of Prophet Abraham Moses, and the importance of the love message of Christ Jesus. So it is almost as if the text is saying, you know these already, you know, so observe them, appreciate them, and appreciate them as an act of will of God, you know, and think about these faith traditions as legitimate before God. So that is something I'm learning more and more about. It's quite a challenge for me. But Martha, tell me in your spiritual walk, you have got this duplex life going, as I see it. You were once a Christian, then you were a Jewish person, and I do know that in that regard, there must be a lot of activity, like Easter is coming up, and then you have, I'm sure, family members that celebrate that, and then of course you have the Jewish holidays that you're practicing. How do you juggle all those?
You know, with some difficulty.
Not including the pandemic, by the way.
And, you know, I think for a while after I converted, I really tried to downplay my roots, as, you know, to feel more Jewish. But my mother was Methodist. And, you know, and being raised Catholic with a Methodist mother, that was always presented as being somewhat second class. So as an adult, I've come to really appreciate my Methodist brethren, and the way, particularly their embrace of social justice. And so, but I can also appreciate, there was a lot that my Catholic upbringing taught me that was good and helpful and holy, and I can hold on to that.
Gotcha.
But I also found the home that I needed to find, apparently,
Yes.
because that's where my life ended up, in Judaism. And when we were celebrating Passover, and we were able to do a Passover Seder with the son on the West Coast and the son and his family on the East Coast via Zoom, which was wonderful. But, you know, it struck me at some point, we don't even know if that story is real.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It doesn't make any, you know, it's like whether it's historically accurate or not does not make any difference in some ways. You know, and it just raises all these questions, and the answers to those questions raise more questions, and being perfectly comfortable with that. It's, you know, in each generation, what do we take from this story?
Yes. Yes.
And I guess maybe from the methods of Methodism, and then of course the hierarchy of Catholicism, I have now come to a religion that doesn't even necessarily require a belief in God. So I have, you know, my spiritual path has been very interesting. And I just, you know, part of it today, I was thinking about my husband and I went for a walk, and it's a beautiful day. And I remember thinking, you know, God made this world, and he made it for everybody,
Yes.
or
Yes.
she,
Yeah.
but for me as well. And I'm alive. And what kind of miracle is that? And I just, you know, the things that we take for granted every day, I'm really trying to stay, particularly, and perhaps this time of being sequestered is helpful,
Yes.
because I can really, it gives me more time to reflect on those things that most days I might be too busy to think about.
Yes. 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 Keith, are you okay with us?
I'm great. I'm great. I'm enjoying this. It's good to see you all and to hear you again.
I want to hear about additional lessons you think that this situation has caused us to rethink our faith. Is there any benefit that we can gather by being sequestered and thinking about our faith during this time?
One thing that comes to mind is, in my sense, we've had to simplify our lives and name our priorities perhaps as never before. And I'm thinking that may be something we want to hang on to, is that as we pray this pandemic passes and we are given the opportunity to do those things that we haven't been able to do, I'm hoping we will have discovered some fundamentals that we want to hang on to, and that perhaps we've had to shed some things that we would have done well to liberate ourselves from long ago. So perhaps there are things that we don't want to rush back to doing. Perhaps we find greater value in family meals. Perhaps we find greater value in going outside. I've lived here in this parsonage for 8 years now, and you know, Paul and I love sitting out and watching the birds, but we've also seen more foot traffic in recent weeks than we've seen the entire 8 years we've been here. That's not a bad thing.
No, it's not bad at all. Yeah.
So I'm hoping this sense of perhaps being able to simplify our lives and to claim those things that really matter, maybe something that we hang on to as we move from this pandemic.
Yes, yes. You know, it's really kind of interesting that I am registering in my mind the relevance of the Kaaba being shut down for the first time in its history. The Kaaba is the place where Muslims go to celebrate the oneness of God and the oneness of humanity. And we're not allowed to go because this is a major Islamic holiday, and here we are going, wow. You know, that is that's some stuff that we can't even practice. Probably the major holiday in Islam, and I've come to realize that a lot of people go through rituals without even thinking about them. You know, they don't actually contemplate the relevance of it. It's just kind of like, you know, if you have someone that you really love, you don't realize you truly love them until they're gone, you know. And I think that's what happens, you know, when I'm realizing that this opportunity to practice this ritual is no longer available to me. So it's a bit of a challenge, you know. But I have to rethink everything because of this situation of just simply pausing here. And I think that's perhaps the benefit of it all, is that I can actually sit down and think. And I'm reading books that I've had this book on my shelf forever. See this book? I am that far into it right now, because and it's a very important scholar. You know, Ishmael El Farouki it should be read by everybody, regardless of what religion you follow. But thank goodness that this time has given me a chance to read and get out there. And another thing was kind of interesting, and this is where sometimes rituals are good things, but it's also sometimes people classify themselves by the ritual they keep rather than the values that the ritual is supposed to teach you. You know, we're so busy trying to do something in our religion, and it gives us some sort of identity, but we forget about the principles involved. And this is something that is challenging for most people in religion. Would you say, Beth?
Yeah, I was going to say, is it, you know, the Sabbath plays a role in all three of our traditions.
Yeah.
And watching the world grapple with a Shabbat, as we would call it, a Sabbath of sorts, where your ability to earn a living is no longer the most important thing, where you are retracting yourself from this world into a more spiritual world, to be able to leave Shabbat at some point in the future, with having studied, having reflected, having learned something ideally, but also coming back to life from Shabbat, which is there's a very beautiful ceremony. Of course, for Jews, there's rituals for everything. There's a ceremony called Havdalah, which means that it's acknowledging the separation between the holy Sabbath and the real world that we live in 6 days a week, when we're not privileged to have Shabbat. So it's very interesting to see if the world itself, literally now, learns some lessons on the beauty of slowing down and understanding that you don't create, God creates.
Yes.
You don't destroy. So I'm hoping people will come out with some of that.
Yes, I hope so too. Martha, what do you think? What is the lesson learned?
I'm sorry, was that me or was that Keith?
That was you, Martha.
You know, I hope there's a lovely phrase that shows up in Jewish services in a number of places, that there is evil enough to break the heart, there is good enough to exalt the soul. And I think times like this truly bring that into vivid relief, that, you know, when we see the fractures in our country that this pandemic has exposed in vivid detail, and then the question becomes, so when we're able to get out of this, what do we do with that? And I think that I hope the answer is going to be something helpful and positive, but I do worry a little bit.
Yes.
Because when people are scared And when people are fearful and when people are threatened, it's very easy to be, to not contribute to the store of good in the world.
Right.
Our job then maybe is to make people feel less fearful and afraid and threatened. So.
Yes. Yes. How do Keith, how do people get over the fear of dying, or the fear of being rejected and isolated? I don't know if that's I don't know if that's the same thing or two different things.
Why don't you ask me a difficult question, Khalil? You know, the short answer is I don't know.
Okay.
And however, I do know that fundamental to the Christian faith is the exclamation, "Fear not."
Right.
It's there when Jesus is born. It's there when Jesus is raised from the dead. It's during the course of his ministry, and that comes to mind because I think for us in the Christian faith, at least, it doesn't come to mind enough. We are terribly, terribly motivated by fear,
Yeah.
even within the church, to state the obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And however, I am deeply moved those times when I see those saints who do not fear death
Mm-hmm.
and are willing to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so all I could say is, for me, you know, we often hear within the Christian faith is the question, why did Jesus die? Which I understand. If God being God, if God wants to save everyone, God is free to do that however God chooses, and can certainly do so without the death of Jesus.
Right.
So for me, it's the more important question is not why did Jesus die, but what happened when he died.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened when he died is, tells me, is he shows us that as we go through death, as we face death, as we die, we have a companion. We have someone who's able to understand and say, I'm there with you, I've been there with you, and I've overcome this. In other words, if Jesus knows life as we know it, yet doesn't die, for me it says we approach death as those who are isolated.
Mm-hmm.
That Jesus stops at some point and says, sorry, I don't know what that's like. So for me, the question about death is not so much why did Jesus die, inviting answers of expiation and whatever substitutionary atonement and so forth, but rather the assurance that even as we face death, we are accompanied by a Lord who has conquered death. Now, I understand it's easier to say that than it is to appropriate that.
Sure.
But I also understand faith as a journey, and I hope it, for me, as I come to that time, that is of comfort and of hope to me, and I hope that is a message of hope and comfort to others within the community of faith.
Sure. In times of isolation, and I'll make this the last question since I have five minutes. It seems like this pandemic, it looks to me that it has sort of brought out the worst in people. Maybe it's because of the economic impact that it's causing on families and loved ones, the loss of family members, but there seems to be the ugly face of hatred and the other and let's not associate with those people. Now we got a good reason not to associate with those people. So tell me, I know that this is kind of, ethnocentrism has been a part of human existence, but it seems, as Martha indicated, it seems like it is glaring at us now. I don't know why it seems to be glaring at us, but tell me, what would you offer a person who may have to get up in the morning and face a world that is a little bit more hateful towards them than it has been in the past? What would you recommend? And we'll go with Martha, since she brought up the issue.
Oh, this must be one of those days when I'm not, real with it or whatever.
That's all right,
Martha. I will tell you, and my thoughts and prayers are with my Catholic friends. Their church here and its priest and the Bishop of Richmond are going through a terrible.
Why? Yes, I've been reading the articles. Yeah.
And people are really suffering a great deal. But one of the things that has come out of that, because of the nature of the sex abuse scandal in the Catholic Church, has been, not surprisingly, homophobia has raised its head. And I think sometimes part of what we can respond is with facts and science and reality. But I think sometimes the only way to really respond is with love, and whatever shape or form that needs to take as we both try to reach out to someone and try to protect ourselves at the same time. But it's, I feel for folks who are experiencing that hatred. I mean, there's no other word for it.
What would be your ought to be phrase? That one should ought to be what?
I'm saying that.
What would be your ought to be phrase? How should people behave, Martha?
We are all one human family. Everybody is a human being. Go from that premise. And if I'm a human, it goes back to the golden rule. If I'm a human being and I know how I want to be treated, then that's how I should be towards someone else who is also a human being. However they may differ from me in whatever way. I mean, this is not rocket science.
Yes.
But,
I got you. Beth, I asked you the same question. How should people behave?
I'm having a slightly different experience than Martha, and it might be because Greensboro is at a higher level of shut-downedness.
Yeah.
I have found in my one-on-one interactions that people are actually, in my mind, kinder and more considerate. I always, they meet you at the door with a smiling face. They clean the cart off for you. They wash your hands for you, and they don't let you in the store until there's enough people out. And it's very symbolic to me of some of the kindnesses that I'm seeing out there. Having said that, what we're seeing in the news is a very different reaction. And I am hoping and praying that what we are seeing is news broadcasters who need something to broadcast. And I know that there were protesters in Raleigh, our state capital here in North Carolina, just a couple of weeks ago. I saw a report today on Twitter that protesters in Madison, Wisconsin, they got 70 additional cases of coronavirus because people were together with the protest. Now, I know that there is ugliness out there, and being Jewish or Muslim in this country, or African American, any minority, kind of situation is fraught with real risk for minorities. But I want to echo Martha again. If we can all come out of this, and I'm talking about the entire world, with the understanding that we are all related. We are all, that same virus is reaching to number 10 Downing Street, to now the White House. That virus is attacking everyone. That's a negative. May the positive be that we come together with a better understanding that we are all the same.
One humanity. Yes. Keith, yeah, I leave you the last word. What do you think we should learn from this?
I think that's been said well, that we are more related than we realize.
Yes.
I hope we could celebrate that as opposed to trying to find the differences.
Yeah.
I hope we could, I mean, I understand what's been said as well, that I have experienced some of the kindness and have been sensitive to that as I have not been previously. And at the same time, I feel like I've tried to be more kind, more patient with someone who may drop their change in the checkout line or someone who may have trouble with the card machine. I feel like, you know, again, the things that matter most, as Martha said as well, is love one another.
Yeah.
That's universal, and that knows no conditions, no boundaries. So perhaps we'll be pushed to experience that in a new way that will carry over as we move from this pandemic.
Yes, yes. I can tell you that this discussion has warmed my heart, and you know, it makes me filled with love and appreciation for all your traditions and you all personally. Keith, I wish you the best with your moving about, and I hope you drop us a line and let me know how you land there, and because we like to stay in touch with you. And
well, Khalil, I want to say one of the real gifts of my time here in Martinsville is getting to know you and others within the Interfaith Council.
Oh, great.
That I've truly cherished that, and I'm thankful for that. I'm thankful for this time together. I hope we'll have the opportunity to meet before I leave at the end of June.
Yes.
But and I would be very blessed if I find this experience in the Winchester area Interfaith Council. I hope that is there too.
Me
But
too.
I do thank you for your leadership.
No, see, that's
Just wonderful memories of participating in our conversations and training, etc. Thank you.
yes. I pray and thank God for extending all of us in knowledge, and I can say without question that I love you guys, and if you have a parting word, Martha, you have that look on your face.
No, I'm just thinking the same thing, that this being part of the faith events and meeting the people that I've met, and it has been, and certainly a lot of appreciation for your leadership on that, Khalil, because that has meant a great deal. And I hope that Keith is going to, if nothing else, Keith, you may have to start an interfaith council.
We drive right by there.
The same thing.
Right. Well,
Good idea.
God bless you all, and have a terrific day, and be safe.
And I had Ramadan, Mubarak, how do I say it? Mubarak?
Ramadan Kareem would be the parting word. Yeah.
Ramadan Kareem.
Ramadan Kareem.
Exactly.
God bless you both.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Oh, that's great.